One of the things I've appreciated most about serving on the Environment and Public Works Committee is the bipartisan consensus we strive to achieve and often do. We often do. It's not very sexy, but we often strive for and achieve consensus. And on a personal note, I've especially enjoyed working with you on legislation to support things like clean nuclear energy, refining our PPP forgiveness process to better serve both lenders and borrowers. And I wanted to serve as a ranking member on this subcommittee to further the cooperation that has historically driven infrastructure policy really over the years and the decades. It's my hope that we can continue the trend by crafting a reauthorization bill that meets the priorities of North Dakotans and Marylanders alike. And despite our geographic and political differences, all of our constituents understand the importance of roads, bridges, and waterways and the role they play in fostering economic development and interstate commerce. No doubt, many of North Dakota's agricultural products make it into Annapolis restaurants, or they are shipped out of the Port of Baltimore, and that benefits both states and everyone in between. My point being, of course, if we keep the main thing, I believe we have a route to success on this reauthorization. That brings us to today's hearing, equity in transportation infrastructure. Mr. Chairman, one of the aspects I appreciate most about EPW is the statutes under our jurisdiction reinforce federalism. Highway policies and projects are coordinated between the state and federal government rather than dictated from the federal government to the states. In fact, Mr. Chairman, I appreciated your comments during our last hearing on the solvency of the Highway Trust Fund. When you had an exchange with a witness regarding how a VMT would fit within a federalist model, it was a great point on your part, and it highlights how we are all very cognizant of the state's role in this equation. Typically, infrastructure projects start from the grassroots, work their way up to the state, and then the federal level. That's why this committee, along with AASHTO and State Department of Transportation officials, which I'm glad to see we have two here today, have consistently supported distributing federal dollars via formula so every state can be responsive to both the interstate commerce needs within their borders and community connectivity issues. My point being, there are multiple examples of poor planning decisions that have led to adverse consequences for specific communities. None of us deny that. And I think we all agree they should be rectified. I believe it should be done at the local and state level where decision makers are closest to the people and able to make a balanced decision. If a new route, expansion, or removal is necessary, that should be done through the state planning process with the formula dollars allotted to them, not a new discretionary grant that pulls from the limited pool of funding within the Highway Trust Fund. That being said, Mr. Chairman, I've always advocated for going big in this infrastructure package. Last Congress, we all supported the passage of the largest highway bill in history, and I have no problem breaking that record again this time around. However, the current proposal to deal with the issue at hand, the Reconnecting Communities Act, introduced by Chairman Carper, would take $15 billion out of the Highway Trust Fund to establish a new discretionary grant. And I don't object to $15 billion being added to an infrastructure package, but how it's dispersed is key. As you all know, the current formula versus discretionary split is roughly 90% formula to 10% discretionary. That is the policy today, and retaining it is one of the top requests from AASHTO and many members of this committee, including me. If we were to pass the Reconnecting Communities Act while following the current 90 to 10 distribution, it would require $135 billion be added to the formula side of the ledger. Similarly, rather than creating a new discretionary grant, if we were to distribute the proposed $15 billion via traditional formula, we would not be picking winners and losers among states. Rather, this would allow each of them the flexibility to be responsive to their communities. If we went this route, it equates to roughly $95 million to North Dakota and millions, if not billions, in the case of California, more for every other state in the Union. It goes without saying, but federal highways exist for interstate commerce. Planning decisions to reroute or remove portions of the system should not be made lightly and should take into account every interested party and the potential repercussions or even unintended consequences of those actions. Again, I would reiterate, the state is best equipped to manage these requests, not a federal bureaucrat parsing through grant applications, determining which applicant meets the political objectives of whoever is in charge. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, the most prominent examples I have seen are in urban settings, as you described. But if you put the issue equity in a rural context, those communities are not struggling with obtrusive infrastructure that gets in the way. Rather, they're dealing with a lack of infrastructure connectivity. H.R. 2 and the Reconnecting Communities Act both limit new capacity or new miles being added to the system, effectively shutting out rural and tribal communities who need more new access, not less. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and I look forward to discussing these issues and listening to the witnesses before us.